Miss Aaron is away for the week. She'll be back next Monday morning. Joining us for a little bit is Mr. Tom Gresham, host of the Gun Talk Show. It is heard Sundays here on KEEL from 1 till 4. Hey, Mr. Tom, welcome back to KEEL. How you been?
Hey, Robert, or should I say guano morning?
Thank you very much. Okay, I texted you yesterday because I want to talk about something that is on, it's definitely on your radar, definitely top of mind. I've read about it recently, so I want you to start with an explanation as simple as possible. What are 3D, three-dimension printed guns? Go ahead.
Probably the best way for people to understand 3D printing is to look on Google. There'll be videos of people 3D printing everything from ashtrays to tools to anything else. It's not a printer as you and I know it, like that spits out paper. It's actually a small manufacturing machine that, think of it as squirting out molten plastic in a computer-controlled way, but also it can now be done. They're actually doing 3D printing of food, of body parts, and they can actually 3D print metal as well. But that kind of diverts us from what actually happened here, because the news isn't really as much about the manufacturing as about what happened with the interaction between this company, Defense Distributed, and the government.
Now, pardon me, Tom, is this that Cody guy in Texas?
Cody Wilson, yeah.
Okay.
Cody Wilson is a real free spirit kind of anarchist. He believes in everybody should have rights. So what he did, and here's the deal, all he wanted to do and all he did was put on the internet some computer files. And they are files that are basically, as Matt said, they're schematics of guns, files that you could use in a 3D printer to print a gun. The government said, no. If you put those files up, that's the same as shipping an aircraft carrier to China, and that's prohibited. And he said, well, that's ridiculous. It's First Amendment. So they told him to stop. He shut it down, but then he turned around and sued the federal government.
Yeah,
that's pretty gutsy.
This has been going on for a long time, right?
Yeah, several years. Now, here's the interesting part. The government, the State Department came to him and said, we would like to settle this, because they looked at it and knew they were going to lose their shirts on the deal. He said, sure. He says, but here's what I need. And he gave them a whole list of things. So the government came to him, settled the deal. Part of the deal is that he could put these files up on the internet, and that's really all it is. It's First Amendment / Second Amendment case. But more than that, one of the interesting parts of the settlement is the government came out with a statement that said, we also certify that semi-automatic firearms up to 50 caliber are not military firearms. They're not military weapons. In other words, the standard AR-15 that the gun banners love to say, oh, that's a military gun, the government says, no, that's not a military gun. So that's kind of an interesting little twist to the whole thing.
So the government came to him. The government literally wanted to cut a deal with the guy who was suing them. How often does that happen? Never.
Almost never. And this has been going on for several years. So this is all supposed to happen on August 1. That's when he is allowed to put these files back up. But, of course, the gun ban industry, the leading three groups that want to ban guns, got together, and they filed it for an injunction in Texas. Cody Wilson lives in Texas. So they all got together. It was like an emergency meeting last Friday in Texas, and it was hilarious, frankly, because the lawyer for the gun banners lost his mind. The judge kept trying to rein him in, and this guy's railing about, well, guns are terrible, and guns are awful, and this is going to let guns be in the hands of blah, blah. And judges say, well, what's the law? So eventually they lost, and the judge says, yeah, you can go ahead and put these up. The government already says you can. So I will tell you this. Cody Wilson had what I thought was one of the greatest quotes. It really struck with me. It was simply this. He says, gun control in the age of 3D printing is a fantasy.
Now, that's interesting you say that, because one of the biggest beefs, one of the biggest objections from the gun control crowd, from the anti-Second Amendment people, is that if you have a plastic 3D printer, if you will, if you can print these, that there's no serial numbers, that literally this is totally beyond the reach of any gun control legislation. What do you think about that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, here's the thing to understand. We have always been able to make our own guns with no serial numbers. This is nothing new. It's been legal, since the start of the country. It's legal right now for somebody to make his own gun if he's not going to sell it and not have a serial number on it. This is just a different way of doing it, is all that is. So if you have a machine shop or you have a lathe or anything, the other thing is we're back to 35 years ago when the Glock pistol first came out, and the gun banner said, "Oh my God, it's a plastic pistol. You know, it could go through airport security and nobody will know," except that it had a pound of steel in it. Well, these guns are going to have steel in them or metal in some form or fashion because you have to for it to function. So once again, it's hyperbole, which is a nice way of saying they're lying.
Now, this Cody Wilson guy, you had sent me a text last night. Well, you sent me a text with a link. Wilson just isn't sitting back on his laurels saying, "Ha, I won." He's striking back at gun control groups. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, well, that's the whole deal. The Attorney General of New Jersey sent him a cease and desist order and says, if you publish these and anybody in New Jersey downloads the files, then we will come after you legally. So he did two things, and also the lead prosecutor for Los Angeles did the same thing. So he took the bull by the horns and said, okay, he hired a bunch of programmers and set it up so that nobody in New Jersey can download the files if they have an IP address in New Jersey. That cost him money. But then he turned around and sued the Attorney General of New Jersey and the prosecutor from Los Angeles in their offices, but also because there's legal precedent, he sued them individually, not in their legal capacity. And now he has set up, it is going to be easy. If anybody else wants a piece of that action, if any other attorney general or prosecutor wants to come in and say, we're going to have a cease and desist order, he'll just add them to the lawsuit individually. So they have to defend themselves individually as well as in their official capacity.
Does the president of his previous wins, do you think that'll help him in his lawsuit against the various states or at least AGs in these states?
Absolutely. And he also has, and I would, truth in advertising here, this suit was brought by Cody Wilson's group, Defense Distributed, and the Second Amendment Foundation, and I am on the board of the Second Amendment Foundation.
So how much longer is this going to go on? Do you see a clean ending to this soon, or is this going to be something that gets dragged out in the courts for the next 5 years or more?
Well, courts, and I think it will probably drag on for a while, and it could be a year or two. But I would just say the legal precedents are very strong on Cody's side, and I think he also has a team of the very best lawyers, including the ones who won the Heller decision before the Supreme Court. I think he's going to win on every front, and this is going to become, frankly, at the end of it, it's going to be a big nothing burger. Because nobody's going to be making a ton of guns this way. It's really just a way of saying, this is information that should be available to the public, and you should not be able to censor us and have prior restraint on First Amendment.
I was interesting you said that. I was most interested in that it would be a First Amendment rather than Second Amendment issue, right?
Sure, because what they're saying is you can't publish. That's what they're telling him. And then we're not talking about like a slap on the wrist. We're talking about like $10 million fine and 10 years in jail for simply publishing this information. And people have been fined tens of millions of dollars under the same law. It's called ITAR, International Trade and Arms Regulation. And we're basically trying to get rid of ITAR because it's nonsense. They're saying that publishing these files is the same as giving the Chinese, secret weapons.
In other words, basically, you're accused of espionage.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. And it's nonsense, and it's a Cold War era law that doesn't apply in the age of the internet. So that's kind of what's going on. You got a lot of First Amendment folks who are on his side on this thing, which makes for, as they say, interesting bedfellows.
Just as an aside, on your Gun Talk YouTube channel, you test a lot of weapons. Have you fired one of these 3D printed guns? Have you tested one of those?
I have not yet, and I would love to. In fact, I need to run down to Austin and get together with Cody and shoot him. Now, here's the other thing. are not just 3D printed. With these files, you can have a desktop milling machine which will make a complete AR-15 rifle, at least the lower section, out of metal, and that's completely legal as well.